We have a clothing rack in our studio. While my boyfriend was facing somewhat towards me, about to get on the bed, I saw the hanger swing. Like it made noise and everything. A single hanger. My boyfriend saw from the side of his eye and heard it as well. I was in shock and couldn't talk, just stared. My boyfriend kept asking me, "What did you see?" But I couldn't talk. He got anxious and kept asking me what it was. And I finally replied, "I'm still processing." It scared the living fuck out of me. Early in the day, the closet door opened on its own as well. Didn't see it, but heard it. I've dealt with paranormal experiences my whole life, but this is the first time I'm actually seeing things move in plain sight, on its own. My boyfriend is at work and I'm sitting in my car because paranormal activity really messes with my mental health. I've got no sleep all night and I've been crying this morning. I'm planning on getting an emotional support cat because I always feel safe around animals. Does paranormal activity mess with anyone else's mental health? It drains me and I feel cold. I get support from family, which I'm grateful for, because a lot of my family has encountered their own spirits, especially during sleep paralysis. I'm scared to go back home. I'm literally going to stay in my car for my boyfriend's entire 12-hour shift. Help. What can I do to cleanse or take my mind off of it? I'm so upset with myself for being so sensitive to this stuff, but it's hard to ignore. I've also been having flies surrounding me excessively. They come from out of nowhere. They follow me to the bathroom and just don't leave me alone. I don't know if this is connected or just dumb. I grew up in a Muslim household, so jinns are something we always believed in and are aware of. Whatever you like to call these spirits, what do you think? The amount of things that happen in my house is crazy. They're not light sounds either. They're really loud footsteps. I hear voices from time to time. My cats go crazy and stare at the ceiling for hours on end, and it's starting to freak me out. I've done a few spirit boards in my place, but there was only one time when something happened, and let me tell you, it was some scary shit. Straight after me and a friend finished the session, we heard extremely loud pounding on my front door and back door at the same time. Even the lights were flickering, and there were loud running sounds in the hallway. Just the general feeling of something evil. I'm not a religious person, but on that night I was holding a Bible and crucifix. I will not move around the house without them ever. Since then, I never feel alone and I know something is watching me. Please don't mess with the dead. If anyone else has a similar experience, please feel free to share. I'm bored and I refuse to go to sleep. So here is a ghost story. I have always been able to see spirits and communicate with them. I love my gift and I also love using it for a good cause. In other words, I help spirits go to the other side with the help of Fear's phone for now. A year ago, a little girl came to my house and my best friend's daughter during one of our past lives in the Victorian era. Unfortunately, she died from an illness. I told her she could stay until she was ready to move on. She plays around the house with my younger sister's toys. Recently, we have a new addition to the group, a little boy. His name is Tom, and he likes to mess around with my sister. He likes to look at her from the doorframe with a big smile and wide eyes, like I do to creep her out. Yes, two of us like to mess with her. The preface. I live in a small town that was founded in the 1850s as a railroad town, as it's exactly 100 between Columbus and Pittsburgh. And at the time, steam engines needed to stop every 100 miles to refill with water. I live on the main street, directly across from the field the tracks run through, just down the street from the old rail depot, now museum, and my house was built in the 1860s by the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. My dogs have always hated my dining room since I bought the house. They won't lay out there and never linger in there long while moving through the house. I've never thought anything of it. I always assumed it was because of the linoleum floor. Recently, within the past few months, they've started barking at the walls in the dining room in the evening. Again, I just assumed it was because of the shadows. The paint in there is a high gloss, light hue, because it's a large room with a single light source, and always feels dark, so at night the light can cast some pretty epic shadows. Well, the week before last, my Mastiff charged into one of the walls while growling, and I finally paid attention to what he was barking at. I went out to the dining room and watched a shadow very clearly move from one end of the wall to the other, while my dog was bashing himself off the wall. I decided to just let whatever it was go on about its business because it has never bothered me. Fast forward today. While I haven't seen the moving shadow again, my dining room fan's light fixture blew 10 brand new bulbs last week. Every light I put in it has stopped working within a few hours. Had an electrician here today and looked it over and used a multimeter on it and said that it's in perfect condition. I don't think I was supposed to see it, and now it's mad at me. I have no idea what it even is. I just know I have a very dark dining room and my dogs refuse to enter it at all. So for context, I was born on a ranch in California. My father was in a contract with the owner of the ranch, which allowed him and his family to live on the property, no rent, as long as my dad worked the land, took care of his cattle, etc. Well, I did not know the history of the land until I became an adult, and I lived by a river that had gold, and people from Europe came to mine. The main ones that came were the French. The town near me was called the French Bar, I believe. Anyway, fast forward. When I was about 6 or 7, when I woke up, there were men, women, and children standing around my bed, dressed in what I would describe maybe pioneer clothing. The women had bonnets, and the men had overalls and pitchforks. The women gave off a more comfort feeling. I remember one leaning over me and saying, "Oh, look at her, she's so cute." Anyway, I was frozen in bed, couldn't move, and when I finally able to swing my body out of bed, I fell. I couldn't walk, so I had to army crawl out of the room. When I made it out, I started bawling. I never told anyone because I myself was confused as to what just had happened. I just got up and shook it off and went about my morning. I was living in San Diego when this happened. My mother, myself, and her boyfriend decided to stay at his mother's house while we were looking for a place of our own. I was staying in a room that was attached to the hallway, which leads to the front door. In the room there was a lamp, a TV, and a bed. The bed had wheels, meaning it can be moved out if needed. So I was fully in bed when the paranormal activity started. It was small at first, with strange feet movements on the sheet like an animal was walking across the top of them. But the mother had no animals. I tried to ignore it, for I believe that giving the ghost attention just makes things worse. That didn't work because the next thing to happen was creaking noises from the wheels as if someone was moving the bed. The bed wasn't being moved though. I had turned on the lamp and TV to try to calm myself down. That didn't really stop anything though, because the sounds were still happening. My mother had noticed the light on and maybe heard the TV. She opened the door and came in. She didn't seem to notice the sounds because she had just told me to go to sleep. I was having trouble staying awake and I had fallen asleep when the animal movement had returned. Something told me to open my eyes. Don't know what, but I did. When I did, I saw I wasn't in the room anymore. I was in the hallway. The bed had been moved there by some unseen force. The bed where I had my feet were facing the open front door. Then it ran with the bed in its hands towards the front door, basically pushing myself and the bed out to the dark outside. I woke up and I was in the room again. The noise and animal movements had stopped. After this, everything was fine. I hadn't had an experience since this one. One last thing, I asked the mother about the room I was in. She had told me her husband used that room before he died. She then told me she had events happen in the home since then. When she had visitors stay in the room, her husband would mess with them to scare them out. I don't know why I had forgotten that detail till now, but I thought I would put it in here somewhere. I grew up in a 60s to 70s house, about 45 minutes outside of London. It was your usual creaky floorboard, barely carpeted sort of place. The first time we saw the man on the stairs, it was me. I was around 10 years old at the time. I used to dry my hair on the landing next to the banister, which had slats so you could see through it. I had my hair flipped over my head, and I saw who I thought was my dad, in his raincoat and carrying his briefcase, walking up the stairs. I flipped my hair back over to give him a hug like I usually did, but he wasn't there. I assumed he'd turned around and gone back downstairs, so I ran down and asked Mom where he'd gone. Only she told me he wasn't home yet. I felt a bit creeped out, but it obviously went out of my head, and it didn't really come back up. The next time I heard about him, I was 18. I'd met my now husband maybe a year before, and my parents had divorced by this time, so it tended to be my mom in the house with us during the week. One Sunday morning, I got a call from her asking if I was okay. I assured her I was and asked her what was wrong, and she said that there had been some banging on the front door at 3 in the morning. Our front door had 2 frosted glass panels, top and bottom, so you could make out shapes through it. And she had a street lamp opposite which lit it during the night. When she came to the top of the stairs to have a glance and see if she could see anything, she said she saw someone with a bag waiting. She started downstairs and stopped herself. She turned back to her bedroom and looked down towards the glass porch we had and couldn't see anyone. When we went back to the top of the stairs, they had vanished. She thought we had an argument, and I'd come home since they were carrying a bag. But once she started playing it in her head, she realized the person was taller than me, a bigger build, and was wearing a raincoat. The only other time I heard about him was from my brother. Now he's very scientific. He doesn't believe in ghosts or the paranormal at all, which is what amazed me even more. When he was younger and still living at home, he used to stay up until all hours playing Xbox. And one night, he finished up. Didn't bother turning on any lights, went to the bottom of the stairs and started walking up when he saw him. A man in a raincoat and a briefcase standing at the top of the stairs. He blinked a couple of times and stepped back down the 2 steps to click the light on. And when he looked back, he was gone. The weird thing here is me and my mom never mentioned anything to him, as he is very vocal about how daft he thinks it all is. The description wasn't perfect. We never found out who he was. As far as we could find out, no one died at the house. My mother passed in 2020 and we sold the house. I always wondered if they're seeing him or if he moved on with her.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross